looking for proof that irony is truly dead need only look to Capitol Hill and Senator Chuck Grassley, ranking Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Here he is today confronting Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Since your confirmation in less than a year, the department has moved as far left as it can go. You've politicized the department in ways it shouldn't be. Case in point, your infamous school board memo.
So more on that memo in just a second, but spoiler alert, as you'll see, it's anything but infamous. First, though, the whole irony being dead thing, because the Chuck Grassley you heard talking is the same Chuck Grassley who shilled for each and every attorney general and acting attorney general the former president used as his personal political enforcer or fired when they would not go as far as he publicly said he wanted them to go. It's the same Chuck Grassley, by the way, who's running for re-election at age 88 and who recently re-embraced the former president shortly after the man put out a statement saying the 2020 election was the real insurrection. And there he is shaking his hand. The same Chuck Grassley who dished up this word salad when CNN's Gary Tuchman tracked him down and asked him about it.
This is your chance to answer that question. Do you think the real insurrection, what he said, was in November?
I don't think your question's even appropriate from this standpoint. I was given a chance to speak 5 minutes at this event, and I took advantage of that to say about what the Biden administration is doing on inflation, nothing. What they're doing at the border, nothing. How they left Americans in Afghan, nothing. And the tax and spending spree that we have. And I had a chance to say about the last 4 years, how I've worked to get strict constructionists on the Supreme Court, how I've worked to get tax cuts, and how we've worked in conjunction with ethanol, with a president that's very appropriately has said how he and I have worked together to benefit Iowans. He said I loved Iowans. So I had an opportunity to be before 23,000 Iowans, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity if he hadn't brought that crowd together.
So, sir, was the real insurrection in November, or was the insurrection on January 6th?
I'll take you back to my January.
It's your chance to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm answering it.
Yeah, he wasn't answering it. He didn't answer it because he's afraid of losing the support of the former president if he crosses or contradicts him. Grassley referred to a statement he made previously after the insurrection, which, if you look it up, was negative toward the president, but he's not willing to actually say that now, to speak those same words, because he's afraid. Even if it means debasing himself. An 88-year-old man who served this country honorably for decades as a senator is now bowing down and debasing himself to the former president just to stay in office. Today, Senator Grassley and some other Republicans on the panel, including Josh Hawley, the guy who raised his fist in solidarity with the gathering mob on January 6th, spent their time with the current Attorney General, Merrick Garland, misrepresenting the facts surrounding the memo. You just heard Senator Grassley mention a minute ago what he called the school board memo. Now, before we go any further, here's what the memo actually said. This is a memo from the Attorney General dated October 4th to the FBI Director, U.S. attorneys, and the head of the Department of Justice's Criminal Division. Quoting from the subject line, quote, partnership among federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement to address threats against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff. It goes on to direct the FBI to convene meetings with those officials to discuss strategies for handling the rise in criminal conduct against school personnel, which, if you've been watching the news lately or involved in your community, you know is a real thing. Now, what has the senators upset is that the memo came several days after the National School Boards Association, not the FBI, the National School Boards Association, wrote a letter to the president in which it likened some of the threats and actual violence to, quote, their words, a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. Now, that association has since apologized for its choice of words, which drew a very negative response, understandably. And this is key. Nothing in the memo by the Attorney General Garland, not one single line, refers to parents as potential domestic terrorists. In fact, there's no mention of parents or terrorism at all in this menu, none. So with that, listen to Tennessee Republican Marsha Blackburn, how she characterized what Garland wrote.
I just have to ask you, knowing that you really helped bring to justice those that caused the Oklahoma City bombing, would you really honestly put parents in the same category as a Terry Nichols or a Timothy McVeigh?
My God, absolutely not.
Then why would you ever release a memo? I mean, did you write that memo? Did staff write that memo? What would have led you to do this? It is so over the top.
He didn't do that, and it isn't. But when Garland said correctly that there's nothing in the memo like that, Senator Blackburn replied, and I quote, "That may be your opinion." Actually, it's not. It's actually just what was in the memo. Democrat or Republican, fan of the administration or not, facts are facts and words are words, and there's not a single word, phrase, comparison, or insinuation on this page that parents are domestic terrorists. There's just not. The only insinuations were coming from Senator Blackburn or, of course, Senator Cruz got in on it.
This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
Then there was Senator John Kennedy.
You don't think there are parents out there in the real world that said, oh, my God, maybe we shouldn't go to the school board meeting. There'll be FBI agents there.
And Senator Josh, I raise my fist for insurrectionist, Hawley.
It's wrong. It is unprecedented, to my knowledge, in the history of this country, and I call on you to resign.
Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas also called on the Attorney General to resign.
This is
That's wrong.
shameful. Judge, this is shameful. This testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
Okay, that's not correct.
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court. You should resign in disgrace, Judge.
We should note that 3 of those you just heard from are said to be considering a run for president based on their performance today. Maybe auditioning would be the better word. Joining us now, CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Jeff, are the comments from Senator Grassley saying Attorney General Garland has politicized the DOJ accurate?
Well, no, they are not accurate. And as you pointed out, they are rich with irony, since he spent 4 years defending the incredibly politicized Justice Department of William Barr and Jeff Sessions. But as you point out, this was theater where Merrick Garland was really a prop more than a witness, so that some Republican senators could campaign for president, some Republican senators like Grassley could run for re-election, but it all had very little to do with Merrick Garland.
What does it say that Grassley is suggesting the Justice Department is politicized when the former president, whom Grassley is clinging to for re-election, tried 9 times to get his Justice Department to undermine the election, according to this committee's report?
Well, this is sort of the fantasy world in which we live. But, you know, Anderson, it's really important to remember why we are talking about school boards at all. Because it's about white supremacy, and that's on the rise in the Republican Party. The reason school boards are controversial is that some school boards have dared to teach that, you know, civil rights and African American rights have not been so great in this country over the centuries, like when we had slavery and when we had Jim Crow. And that has so outraged the Republican Party, telling the truth about race in America, that they feel the way to win elections and to win the governorship in Virginia is to demonize these school boards for daring to tell the truth about race in America. And that's really the core of what's going on here. And that's even more chilling in a way than the posturing that went on today in the Senate.
You know, some who watched today thought Attorney General Garland should have maybe pushed back harder. Are you surprised he didn't, or is that just not in his nature?
You have to remember that Merrick Garland had spent the last 20 plus years on the DC circuit, where the judges treat each other with respect, where they deal, even when disagreeing with each other, in the realm of what you might call reality and facts. And he's not used to the give and take in the surreal world of our contemporary politics. I think he handled it in a low-key way, but he was really irrelevant to what the Republicans were trying to do, which was to lie in advance of a white supremacist agenda.
Jeff Toobin, I appreciate it. Thank you.